What's up, everybody? Back with another NBA breakdown, and I'm excited to do it today because yesterday I had to do it by myself. It turned out all right, but it's going to turn out better when I've got Sam with me from the Source podcast. Sam, how's it going, man?
It's going well, man. I'm glad that we have NBA basketball back. College is fun, but it's also one of the most stressful things ever. I think I've lost about 2 years of my life in the last week just because no NBA. The All-Star game was actually a little more fun than I thought it would be, at least the
Yeah.
fourth quarter. And Obi Toppin in the dunk contest. I hesitate to flex that dunk contest win because in typical Knicks fashion, we only won because everyone else sucked. So it wasn't even because we did anything special. But I'll take it at that point. I see you rocking the Wolves hat. Cat was
Hell
incredible in
yeah,
that
man.
3-point contest. It's funny because before he went, I didn't have any money down on the 3-point contest because it's just so many guys, just about how you get hot. But right before he went, I was like, what? Cat can get hot. And as I was like, oh yeah, light it up, big man. And as he kept going, I was like, okay, light it up, big man. Light it up, big man. He finished it off. He torched it. I was so happy for him, especially because I'm part of and I'm definitely going to get hate for saying this on my Twitter page. I don't think I've ever said this on my Twitter, but I'm part of the Cat is the best big man shooter of all time crowd.
Nice.
Which is people hate because they love Dirk, and I love Dirk too. But Cat is, I think, 7th all time in terms of his effective field goal percentage of guys who have shot more than 23s, who are over a certain height. And and then it's just he has some crazy stats to go along with it, and he can get so hot offensively. So that was really fun. But I'm excited to have actual games back.
Yeah, man.
Celtics last night. We ride the train anyway. We kept going. It's that defense is incredible. There's a lot of impressive things. There are a lot of good momentum teams going into the second half of the season that I'm really interested in seeing how they shake out.
Yeah, I think that's something I've been interested in too. I said this yesterday on the show a little bit, but it's like these trends that you or teams you felt pretty strongly about, like the Celtics are a great example. Do they come out in the second half and keep it rolling or not? And that's part of what we have to, at least make our guesses on. So well, we got a ton of games here, so we're gonna jump in and get through them.
Yeah.
First up, we've got the Raptors going to the Hornets, one of my favorite teams to bet against, but we'll get to that. Toronto -2, 226. What do you got, man?
Charlotte has also been one of my favorite teams to bet against. And it's crazy because I really liked them at the beginning of the season, but there are a lot of holes in this Hornets team. I guess we should just start breaking them down. First of all, before I get to Charlotte's faults, Toronto's strengths. Toronto's won 3 of the last 4 matches between these two teams, including the first 2 this season. They also have an 11-4 record against the Hornets in the last 5 seasons and have scored 115 points in 8 of those 15 contests, including both games this year, which goes in line with Charlotte's terrible defense. Charlotte's also shooting 29% from 3 and it's over its last 10 games, which attributes to their slump. And you kind of really see how important the offense is to this team, because when they can't shoot threes, it's not even twos. If they can't shoot threes, they can't keep up with the other team who's just coming down and scoring them relentlessly. Toronto has no OG Anunoby, which is slightly worrisome because they're 6-9 without him. But Charlotte is 3-9 without Gordon Hayward, and they shoot 31% from 3 in that span. Just for reference, that's the total shooting. That's how well the Thunder shoot from 3 this year. I think they're the worst team in the league shooting threes. So Charlotte's shooting like the worst team in the league from 3 without Gordon Hayward. I think that's pretty significant. Siakam had 24, 11, and 8 the last time these two teams played. Toronto, and that goes in line with the Hornets being terrible against centers. And while I do understand they traded for Trez, that makes them better offensively for centers. If you know Trez, he's not a good defender. He's good at offense. He's good at getting offensive rebounds and fighting. He's kind of like Kenneth Faried on the offensive boards. I kind of like him too with his ferocity there. He's strong, but on defense, he is not able to hold opposing centers down, partially because he's not as large as them. And I just think that that doesn't really change how Siakam's going to play today. I think he still has a very good game. Toronto's getting a lot of public money, which I don't like, but they are still getting, even though they're getting 84% of the bench, they're getting 91% of the money. So they're still getting sharp action in there, which means that even if a play is public and, obvious to people, it still might be getting more money from the bigger heads and the bigger money. So that's always encouraging. Toronto's also 9-3 against the spread versus Southeast Division opponents, and they're a much better rebounding team. I like to fall back on rebounding stats. Toronto's second in offensive rebound percentage. Charlotte's 27th in offensive rebounds allowed. And while Charlotte is good at scoring points in the paint, Toronto's actually top 7 in points in the paint allowed. And when these last two teams played, Toronto out-rebounded Charlotte by 13 en route to a 15-point win. In both games that these teams have played this season, Charlotte's had under 40 rebounds. For a team with a pace as high as theirs, that's really concerning. And Toronto's top 15 in offensive and defensive rating since January 15th. This is one of my favorite plays on the board today. I'm really happy we started with this one. I love Toronto -2. I also like the money line, and I like Siakam 24+ points at -115 and 10+ rebounds at +106. I like the rebounds more than the points because you get the plus number on a number that he's very easily able to get against this team at +106 for 10. But I also like the points at 24.
I love that you're throwing in a player prop, really up in the.
I don't usually do that, but I don't know. For me, when I have a game that I think I'm seeing very well in terms of how I think it's going to go, I think if this game goes as I think it's going to go, then it's going to be because the Raptors run this game in and out through Siakam. My concern there is that he gets a lot more assists, but his point plus rebound plus assist number was 38.5, which I thought was a little high. Because even if he gets those 24 and 10 with points and rebounds, then you need him to get at least 4 assists. His prop is at 3 today. So it's almost like they're taking a point with juice on the points plus rebounds plus assists, which I don't like. But I mean, he obviously could be swarmed in the paint, kick it out to Gary Trent. Gary Trent goes crazy. That's obviously a possibility I wouldn't be upset with. But I do think either way, he's majorly involved in the offensive game plan, which gives him a lot of opportunity to get points and rebounds against a team that is pretty much centerless most of the time. I don't really count Plumlee. I'm sorry. And even when they're not, they run such a fast pace and take so many take so many threes that the board possibility is there and the pace possibility gives the points.
Yep. Well, so I'm gonna say a few things, not too much, because honestly,
I didn't mean to hog all the time.
No, you're fine. What I was gonna say though is, as you were talking, I'm like, oh, yep, had that written down. Oh, yep, had that written down. So we're on the same page largely. Two things I want to say though. One is a larger point about the public money thing. This is something that I look at as well. And I remember early on when I started betting and I started looking at the public money, it was just like, oh, if the public's on it, then it's got to be bad. But I've actually been tracking this for the last month or so. And it goes in spurts, but like in the last 2 weeks of NBA action, the public money has been right like 65% of the time or something like that. So just to say, if it's a play you really like, public money's not, and I think it'll move the other way at some point. Like I believe it will, but it's just not a reason in and of itself, especially with all the money on it, like you said. So,
I got to wonder, and this is just like spewing BS. There's no numbers behind this or whatever, but with, the public usually loses on big games like the Super Bowl, right? And I know the public's been losing a lot in college basketball recently because I've been following it. I wonder if it's kind of like, and obviously you can't have like, I'm sure Vegas isn't like, oh, we lose here, we win here. But like on some level, I wonder if Vegas is a little more okay with the public getting some wins in after the Super Bowl, where the majority of the public had Rams -4, Bengals covered the 3. Now, do they kind of let the public get a little more into it? So they not like let them win, obviously, because you can't tell, but to Vegas's advantage, like they can move lines and change lines based on some bets when they don't feel like it. And sometimes for me, I'm just like, maybe they're letting the public sneak back into it. So they're more invested in betting again next week when, the public gets screwed.
It's like the slots almost. You got to let a win happen once in a while so people keep playing. If you
hear the big and you see all the coins come out, you're like, oh, I can win that.
Exactly. Or you win a little, you're like, I'm going to get the big win next time. So anyway, just saying, like, this is a play that I like as well. And a lot of it comes down to, you hit on it some, but just a couple other numbers I'm going to share. Really, Charlotte just shot like shit going into the break. 4 of 10 games under 25%. I mean, under 25%, 4 of 10.
That is abysmal.
8 out of 10 were 31.1% or under. So now we're to 80% of the games at that. The other thing for them is that they were much worse at home in their last 15 games, and they're home tonight. 3-point percentage at home in the last 15, 27.2. Where on the road, it was 37.7. Field goal percentage, 41.2. On the road, it was 49.2. Offensive rating, 102.4 at home, 109.7 away. Defensive rating, 119.2 at home, 114 on the road. So just like every number is significantly worse at home over the last 15 games for this team. So one of the things that I wrote down a question for myself is Charlotte shot 34.5% from three on the season, 29.7 in February. You think at some point maybe there's some regression toward the mean, right? But at the same time, they've been so terrible. So I'll just ride the trend. If it turns around at some point, then I'll take that into account when it happens. But for now, this should be Toronto all day, I think.
Yeah, and that definitely popped into my mind when I was looking at the public money and like how could this go the other way. But and I mean, obviously, this could be a cold take, and we come back to this after the game and be like, this wasn't relevant to the game. But for me, when I look at a team like the Hornets that has talent, but also they've played very poorly before the All-Star break, but now they're coming off the All-Star break. Do they play better at home? Do they play better defense? I look at things like acquisitions and coaching. Their acquisitions did not help on defense. They might help offensively with the center position and ease the offensive load on Plumlee. But at the same time, Trez is not a good defender. So they didn't fix the defensive problems from the inside, and they still have bad perimeter defenders pretty much all around besides Bridges. And then and this is not a shot at James Borrego, but do I really think James Borrego has the coaching experience and the suave to take this All-Star break and turn this team around with almost no changes in personnel, almost no changes in, momentum's going down. They had guys in the All-Star game, like LaMelo was in the All-Star game. So it's not like he was back there working with the team. It's just how much can they have really changed over this course of time? I know it felt like forever for me, at least.
Yeah.
It felt like a month without basketball, but it's been a week. And how much can James Borrego really change this roster and change how good they are on defense in a week's time? I don't see it.
Yep. Last thing I'll say too, just for how I look at some of this stuff coming out of the break, and then we'll get on to the game of the day and the Rockets and the Magic. But I'm willing to lose a bet to make Charlotte prove it to me.
I can't believe you just slipped that in there.
Yeah. But
it took me a second.
If I have to lose one bet for Charlotte to prove it to me that they're turning things around at home, then I'll lose one bet. Exactly. But as long as this trend has been going on and as bad as they've been, I'm going to stick with what the data is telling me. And if I have to lose one bet along the way, then fine.
So be it.
So anyway, all right, we're on the same page there. Oh, total wise, I don't care about this game, by the way.
Not at all.
Yeah, okay.
Well, because it's really a trap because Charlotte's defense has been so bad recently and their offense has been so bad recently. You lean under right away, but then you're like, man, their defense had been better a little bit recently. But then you also are like, am I really about to trust this defense to take an under? And with the way that these two teams have played each other, am I really about to say that this game is not going to be a high scoring bonanza?
Yeah, just pass.
Can't do it either way.
For me, so
all right, man. Just pass.
Yeah. So here we go. Rockets at Magic, man. Orlando -3.5, 235.
I don't usually have situations in a spread this close where I'm like, I wish the number was smaller and I might take it. But this is one of those situations, really. I mean, Houston is a horrible defense. We know this is the worst defense in the league, but Orlando is also terrible. And they're missing Mo Wagner. Houston beat Orlando by 2 earlier in the season. Both teams put up a ton of points, and it was kind of just who had the last possession. Orlando won the rebound battle by 9. It didn't matter. Houston's 8th in points in the paint per game. Orlando's 6th in opponent points in the paint per game, and yet that didn't seem to have any effect last time they played. But Houston's also 7-17 against the spread versus teams with losing records, and 9-16 against the spread versus poor offensive teams scoring less than 108 points per game. So I just both sides. I would feel like I just don't want to take either. It's really I don't want to. I kind of like the under a little bit, but at the same time, it's the same thing with the Hornets. I'm not going to take it under when the Houston Rockets are playing. especially when it's another bad defense they're playing where Houston can actually put up points. It's too worrisome, but the number's too high at 235 for me to take the over. This is a game I really have no interest in taking on any side.
Yep. So again, we're looking at some of the same things. I do have a lean toward one side, which I'll say at the end, but I haven't bet anything here. So Houston lost 7 straight going into the All-Star break. Orlando was 1-6 going into the All-Star break.
A real barn burner we got
both terrible. You talked about how bad they've been defensively. I won't read all these numbers, but let me just give a couple. In their games leading up to the All-Star break for Houston, they gave up 142, 124, 135, 139. That was consecutive games. Orlando gave up
didn't they give up like 150 to the Clippers?
I don't have 150 on here, but maybe they did.
Not 150, like 140 something.
142, right?
That 142 was to the Clippers.
Yep.
And I like the Clippers, but like they were missing Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Norman Powell. I mean, come on.
Exactly.
I'm not saying they shouldn't win, but 142 points.
Yeah, it's way too much. And if it was a one-off game, you could even go, it was just one game, but. So Orlando similar 130, 121, 132, 114. That was their last 4 going into the break. And they had another one at 135, 126. So both these teams, as you were saying, just to add more credence, terrible on defense. Orlando has allowed 40 plus rebounds in 30 plus straight games. Since January 1st, when Houston has 40 or more rebounds, they score 110 or more in 9 out of 12. And usually it's significantly over 110. So, and then similarly on the other side, Houston's allowed 33.3% from 3-point range in 10 out of 12 games. Most correlated stat recently to Orlando scoring 110 plus. So both of these point to these teams being able to score to me. But like you said, this total's so high now at I think it started out at 228 or 228.5. That makes sense to me. 235 does not. I'm a little bit interested in Houston money line here, actually. I think that Jalen Green is coming around as part of that for me. I was going back and looking at his game log, and he's been shooting the ball a lot better. He's been scoring better, just playing better overall. And so who knows if either of these teams is really trying hard to tank, though. There's that into play. So like I said, I don't have a bet.
I saw
here.
You subtweet the Magic the other night with Wagner sitting.
Totally. Yeah. Like we got to start sitting people. So anyway, I don't feel strongly here, but if I was going to take a side, I think I'd actually just take a little plus money and go with Houston.
You know, I like that a lot just because, I mean, you have a team that won the last matchup here, even despite being out rebounded, and they're at a good number. Like it's like, I don't want to be rude to either franchise's fans here, but it's a battle of the two dumpster fires, and you take the best number because either one of them, like, I'm not surprised if the Rockets blow this game, just as I'm not surprised if the Magic blow this game. It's not even necessarily for me about who wins it rather than who's going to lose it. Yeah. If that makes any sense.
Totally. All right. Well, not the most exciting game. So we'll move on to the next. Spurs at Wizards. Spurs are up to -3.5 now. They started out the day at -1.5, 224.5 total.
Yeah, there's a lot of steam going on this game. I kind of jumped on the boat a little late, but I do like the Spurs in this one for a couple of reasons. It's a light play for me. I'm only going. I think I have one unit on it. But the Spurs have won 3 straight matchups between these two teams, scoring at least 116 points in all of them. They've also won 3 of the last 4 going into the break, scoring 114 plus in all 3 wins. Since the beginning of 2018-2019 season, the Spurs are 6-1 against the Wizards, scoring 115 or more in each game. So this is not an isolated incident. It's also San Antonio's longest streak of consecutive games with at least 115 points against a single opponent, since doing so for 9 straight games against the Lakers from 1986 to 1989. So this is one of their longest streaks of success against a team in a very, very long time. And since they've already done it to them this year, I do kind of like the idea of staying on that path. That being said, they're also missing a couple people. They're missing Richardson, Langford, and Primo. And it doesn't seem like much, but those are all 3 guys that kind of rotate in the guard spots. After losing Derek White, you get Josh Richardson, Langford, and you got Josh Richardson and Langford, and they're both not able to play in that spot. Primo's also someone that steps up in the 2 spot. He's not there, so that makes me a little concerned. But Devin Vassell has also been playing pretty solid for them. in his limited time getting that many minutes. Beal and Porzingis being out, obviously, I shouldn't even say Beal anymore because he's out for the season.
Right.
But like Porzingis being out kind of just leaves them weaker because they traded for him. So they lost pieces for him and they haven't gained anything from it yet. My big question that I wrote in all caps, and I think I have 8 question marks next to it. Who is stopping DeJounte Murray? I mean, they got Raul Neto and Corey Kispert in the backcourt there. And I know last time I was on the show, I talked about those guys not doing enough, and then they won a game. And like, slow the roll. It doesn't mean that you can stop like an all-star like DeJounte Murray. And there's not many guys on that bench. Correct me if I'm wrong. Let me look at their starting lineup. But yeah, off the bench, Ish Smith is the only point guard, and Denny Avdia is the only guy who can hybrid as a shooting guard, even though he's not. He's a small forward, power forward hybrid. So they don't really have guards to back up there, which means Kispert, Neto, and Smith are going to be responsible for dealing with DeJounte Murray. I think he's going to have a very good game, as he usually does. My only problem here is the Spurs, and the reason I'm light on this is the Spurs are 9-16 straight up against the Eastern Conference. That being said, they're also 6-0 against the spread versus teams with a losing record in the second half of the season. If you split it up by like 41 games, not by the All-Star break. Washington's 5-14 against the spread versus Western Conference teams. So they're actually worse against the West than the Spurs are against the East somehow. And the Spurs have a better offensive and defensive rating. I just think all of those things combined, I got the number at 3, so I missed a lot of the steam, but I got it before the 3.5 hook. I anticipate it might drop back down to 3,
Possible.
just because of how much steam is going up on this side, the Wizards being at home coming off the All-Star break. But I do like the Spurs to win this game. 150 is just a little too heavy of a money line for me to take for a road team here that's not necessarily that good of a performer on the road. But I do like the Spurs in this matchup. As I told you before we went live, I am looking more in these games at matchup disparities more so than statistical disparities, because you don't really, I shouldn't say you don't really know, but it's just for me, there are some teams that perform statistically different coming out of the breakfast division. Like I didn't bet on the Cavs Pistons game yesterday because I was like, on paper, everything points to the Cavs here, which means they're going to struggle because like, why not? So I don't know. I'm getting a little cynical about basketball, I guess, about the NBA.
All right. Welcome to the cynical show. I took the Pistons when I saw Garland was out. I just felt like Cleveland would struggle with him and LeVert out. So yeah, I had to do that fast too before the line moved. So yeah, I'm pretty much with you. I won't say a ton more here, just like 2 things. So I got on this at -1.5. And I'll be honest, when I took it, like I'd like to say I always have these strong things behind my plays. And I had done some research, but part of it was I just think Washington's a pretty shitty team. So like the Spurs at -1.5, I was like, I feel like that's a good bet. And here's what I'll say matchup wise. When I look at their rosters, what you brought up about DeJounte Murray, I don't think anyone does stop him. And I actually like the construction of the Spurs team because they've created a spot where DeJounte can do all the creating. He's got 3 shooters around him, and then they have Pirtle that he can work with on. And Pirtle's not amazing or anything. And don't get me wrong,
offensively, he's solid on the offensive glass, but it's just defensively. But they're facing Thomas Bryant, who's a game time decision if he even plays. So how much are they going to be damaged at the center spot?
Right. And so the Spurs for me are a team when they play middle tier to lower teams in the league, I like them. Like I think they have a really solid team as far as that goes. They're not going to compete well against the best teams. I mean, in an every night basis, the best teams in the league. So in this spot against a team in Washington that I think played a couple good games right before the All-Star break, and that kind of covered over all the stuff of how terrible they were for the 10 games before that. I like the Spurs to come out strong tonight. So
yeah, and I also take this with a grain of salt because I don't go to Capital One Arena very often, but on the few times that I have this season, it just seems like at the beginning of the season, I have a couple friends who have season tickets as well, and it seems like the beginning of the season, everyone was really excited. The games were great at home, and they were playing well at home.
They were,
and now tickets are like $8 a pop, and I don't think there's really a home court advantage in stone here for the rest of the season for the Wizards. There's just too much to care about going around in Washington, D.C. right now. And this is not a judgment on Wizards fans because I'm sure there are diehard Wizards fans everywhere. But I mean, for me, like, I'm so used to the Knicks being terrible that I root for them no matter what, and I'll go to games no matter what. The Garden's always popping no matter what because Knicks fans are insane. And we like we would never, I'm not going to the game. I don't want to support the team. But that is something that people do sometimes. I don't
Yeah.
want to pay and go watch my team stink.
Right.
My pops has season tickets to the Knicks. He's giving up. He's giving them up next season. He said, and he actually, I'm gonna be able to meet him. I'm gonna be able to go on the courtside for warm ups on my birthday because
Nice.
they tried to offer him that as a please keep your season tickets thing.
Wow.
So that'll be fun. But yeah, it's just I don't know. I don't like from what I've seen in Capital One Arena, that support is not there for the Wizards. And it's like the stadium's not even full half the time. I don't see going on the road being a huge problem here for the Spurs, which is why I'm okay with taking the number even after I've missed a lot of the steam.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, numbers wise, the Spurs actually in their last 15 have been slightly better on the road than at home. I mean, it's not massive. That's why I didn't bring it up, but like, it's not a detriment.
It bodes well.
I'd say. Yeah. Yeah. So I do also, from what you said, I think I would have some interest in the Spurs team total over here as well. I mean, sometimes Washington bogs down games and plays low scoring, but the Spurs have done well against them, as you said. So something to consider.
Yeah. And my thing with one more thing I want to say is that like with teams, when you have a streak against a team like the Spurs do against the Wizards, another thing I like to look at is, who is it attributed to? And when you have a coach like Popovich, it's a little different than, if you're a average coach who beats another team like 3 times in a row and scores 115 points. When you have a streak this long and you have Greg Popovich as the coach, to me at least, the angle I see it at is that Greg Popovich has the Wizards number. This season, or at least in the last couple of years, like he has a formula that they consistently can go to beat the Washington Wizards. It's not ironclad by any means. Obviously, every game is its own battle, but when you have someone who's as great at their job as Greg Popovich is, for me, that enters my mind a little bit when I see a team dominating another team as much as they do. It's like the before this season, it was like the Patriots and the Bills.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. I think especially when there's good coaching there, like you said, totally makes sense. All right. Well, we like the Spurs. So some good spots hopefully here tonight. So next up, we got the Thunder at the Pacers. Indiana is -7, 226 total.
Yeah. I've had some issues with the Pacers. Just because they're so hard to read, or not even that they're so hard to read, it's that it's hard to read how teams are going to play them, especially teams that don't score a lot in the paint are going to try to score a lot in the paint. We've already discussed in great detail over a lot of the times over the past month how the Pacers have been garbage with their paint defense ever since Miles Turner got hurt and Sabonis got traded. But I have a half unit play here on the Pacers -6. I got it very early on. I wonder what it's at right now. I think it's at 6.5, so not really much of a difference there. But I just, I'm falling for the trap of, seeing how bad the Thunder are offensively. And they shoot the 8th most threes in the league, but they shoot the worst percentage in the league. Their defense usually keeps them afloat, but I'm actually very happy with the Pacers getting Malcolm Brogdon back here. I'm really excited to see what they can do with the trio of Brogdon, Halliburton, and Hield. And that kind of contrast, even though Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is back, that kind of having Malcolm Brogdon back neutralizes Shai a little bit more. Now, I'm not going to say it neutralizes him completely, but Malcolm Brogdon is a very good defender, very good on-ball defender. And even though he is coming off of injury, which does make me slightly nervous, I really do like having him, Halliburton, and Hield over Shai having Giddey and Wiggins next to him. That's not a shot at Giddey or Wiggins. I just don't think they're necessarily great off-ball scorers, which is what Shai is going to need them to be. And I feel like that's why Josh Giddey plays a lot better without Shai, because he gets to run a lot of the point situation. But Shai is just much better on the ball, and he's their best player. So he's going to get the ball. He's going to have a lot of the dribbling opportunities. The last time these two teams played, Indy got 60 rebounds. Miles Turner wasn't playing.
Wow.
So that's another big indicator for me. Also, a lot of the guys who are game time decisions for the Pacers, Brogdon, Jackson, and Batadze are all probable. So that actually makes me think they're going to play, unlike their usual spiel where they line everyone up for a game decision and knock them off out one by one. I actually think they're going to play this time, which means that I also think I got a better number on Indy than I'll probably get at game time, because I think with guys being ruled in, number goes up. I don't have that much else on this game besides the fact that Indy is 15-7 against the spread versus Western Conference teams. But there is stuff to go. There is a lot going for Oklahoma City here as well. I don't want to ignore what they have. Besides the fact that they have a lot of sharp money coming in on them, the majority of the handle, not the majority of the bets, and they're 28-14, revenging a loss against an opponent against the spread. 7-point spread is very high, and the Thunder are one of the best teams against the spread in the league, so I don't want to discount that. That's why my play is very light. I have a half unit, but I do like Indy at -6 and -6.5. Once I get to 7 here, I start to drift off.
Yeah. I like the Duarte's looking like he'll probably play too. I mean, still a game time decision, so that's not for sure. But no, I'm with you in liking those guys that should be playing tonight. So this is one where I initially, when I looked at this game today, I thought that I would be on the Oklahoma City side.
Same.
Some of that is probably living in Indiana now, so I've started following the Pacers more, and so I get skeptical of them and the fact that they were scoring a ton before the break but just couldn't stop anybody. So I was looking just at the 4 games since the Halliburton trade where he's played, and they scored a ton, 113, 119, 120, 113, but they had a 108, but every other game was 120 plus. They allowed 50.6% from the field, 43.5% from three-point range, 26 free throw attempts a game. The issue I have, though, is I'm not sure that Oklahoma City is very capable of taking advantage of that. Like, Indiana, I think, is not a great defense right now, but Oklahoma City is a terrible offense. They have a game where they spike here and there, but since Christmas,
against the Knicks.
So since Christmas, they've only been 50% plus from field goal range 2 times and 40% plus from 3-point range 3 times. So they just don't shoot well. It's what you said. They might shoot a lot from 3, but they don't shoot well.
Which also shows that they don't know their personnel that well. Or at least their system isn't run properly.
Or like you said, the personnel doesn't fit necessarily. Yeah. So I was on this train when Shea was out too, of like how many games they'd scored 104 or less, and I'll be back on it if he goes back out. But honestly, I went back and looked at the numbers, and it only changes like half a point if he's in or out on average. So they're not a team that's not good at scoring. Well. Yeah, they're not a team that scores well just because he's in. And they've had some good games in their last 9. One where they only allowed 94 points, but they've also allowed 120 plus a few times, 110 plus quite a few times.
They're very streaky defense.
Yeah. And one of the key matchup pieces here, Indiana, and I know that this goes back when the personnel was different, but I think it also goes to them driving some as well, where Indiana's number 7 in points in the paint this year. Oklahoma City's only number 15 defending points in the paint. Yeah. That can also speak to what you said about rebounding. If you're not good at defending the paint, you're probably not a great rebounding team either. So also, I ended up flipping on this game where right now I just have a parlay with the Pacers and the Heat money line because I didn't know about the spread. But I'm kind of with you, like at 6 or 6.5. I don't think it's a bad play. I think Indiana's scoring great, and they might not put up as many against Oklahoma City, but I think they still score all right here. I'd even be interested in the over or Indiana's team total over potentially in this game. I think they'll be able to put up some points.
Yeah, and 2 things there. First of all, about the points in the paint. Not only is that the case there, but I think Oklahoma City, even though the Pacers are, as we've discussed, really bad with points in the paint defensively, Oklahoma City's like 15th or 16th. So it's not something to necessarily go to that often. And yeah. I'm not necessarily worried that that's going to be their focus or their game plan like it often is with Memphis, like we talk about. But the other thing, I know this kind of shouldn't play as much in people's minds for spread betting. But for me, when I look at games with spreads that are over 5 but below 10, I do look at free throw shooting a lot because I feel like those numbers are really important. And when you have Malcolm Brogdon back and now you've added Buddy Hield to this offense, they are very good at free throw. I mean, Malcolm Brogdon has led the league in free throw shooting percentage several times. Him being back is a great fixture for that. They also, I mean, Buddy Hield's also a very, very good free throw shooter. So those things as well make me a little more confident in taking the points, not just the money line, because I feel as though if it's closer to the end and they get fouled, I'm more confident in them than I am in a lot of other players to sink their free throws. And I know that they're going to get the ball to Malcolm Brogdon.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
I'm probably with the Warriors and Jordan Poole.
Yeah, right. So I'm probably going to pass on the over, by the way, too. I was just looking at line movement. This game started at 216.5.
Wow.
And now it's at 226. So
yeah, we missed the boat.
Yeah, so I'm going to pass on it, but I wish I had gotten in.
Wow.
All right. It's Sam's game of the day. Heat at the Knicks. You got it. I see it. Miami -6 now. Nice. Started out -4.5, I think. -4. 212 total.
Customized for my pain and everything.
Yeah. Give us the Knicks take, man.
The Knicks take is that the Knicks stink, and if you see a number against a good team that is low, you should take the other team. And I hate having to say that, but I mean, at some point we have to be realists, right? We can't beat around the bush. I mean, the Knicks have been absolutely god awful recently, and especially against the Miami Heat. And I don't like going back this far usually because obviously personnel changes, but the Heat have won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the last 9 matchups against the Knicks. That right there shows me dominance, because Eric Spoelstra is another one of those coaches who I really do respect. And if he has a game plan against the team, I think he'll be able to work it out well. The last time these two teams played, I had to turn the game off. That's kind of like something I guess I shouldn't factor into it, but I will. The Knicks only lost by 14, but they were down by 25 in the third quarter. It was an absolute disgrace of a game. Something that is not on the stat sheet that by the way, I'm not like saying this like, oh, this is a good thing to bet on, but I'm also like saying this is going to be a factor in the game. I'm very concerned about Mitchell Robinson's father. I don't know if you've seen the reports, but Mitchell Robinson's father has been missing for 36 hours.
Wow.
And he is very, very obviously, understandably, very, very upset. And he's, he was like pleading on a video for his father to come home. He's got other things on his mind right now, man.
That's rough.
And like, I'm not blaming him for it whatsoever, but
No.
with the Heat working very inside out, I couldn't have a good fucking basketball game. Pardon my language.
No.
I couldn't have
you're good.
I couldn't have a good basketball game with that going on. I don't even know if he's on the injury report. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't blame him for not playing.
Agreed.
There's like this
Yeah,
it's
agreed.
There are things that are more important than basketball. Family is one of them. And that's definitely going to be the case for Mitchell Robinson. And honestly, I hope he prioritizes, the team understands and lets him prioritize his family. With that being said, without Mitchell Robinson, the Knicks' interior defense is atrocious. Bam Adebayo is a key function in the offense for the Miami Heat. And the Knicks are just not very good against teams that are able to play their game, which is slow half-court offense with high-intensity defensive pressure. And if a team can match the Knicks on the defensive end with that and also outperform them on offense, the Knicks get very, very lost very quickly. This is not one – and by the way, this is not one of those games that I so perfectly predicted last week where the Knicks go up by 20 and then blow the lead, which, by the way, if anyone was listening last week and heard me say the Knicks were going to go up by 20 against the Nets and then blow the lead, and then we talked about taking a halftime Nets bet, I sincerely hope you did that, because at the very least, I hope my pain gave you financial benefits. At least someone can win there.
Yeah.
But this is not going to be one of those games. I think the Knicks get blown out by 20. I don't think it's close. I might be a little bit, cynical about the Knicks, and that's why I don't, the line's 6, and I'm saying they're going to lose by 20. But I mean, pardon me for having no faith in this team. They had a pretty easy first half of the season, all things considered. We have the 4th hardest schedule in the second half of the season of all teams, and we're now going through the motions of sitting Kemba so that the younger guys can play more. This just strikes me as a team that's not giving the effort anymore. The Heat are obviously giving the effort still.
Yep.
And the Knicks are distracted. I mean, you can't blame guys like Mitchell Robinson for being distracted with family, stuff like that. Now we're sitting Kemba and we're moving a lot of things around. I just don't think this is a good time to back the Knicks, especially since they have been worse at home recently.
Yeah. Yeah, they've been worse at home, and I don't have tons to add here. I mean, I'm with you on this one. I bet Miami at -4.5. I'm considering adding more. I have them in that parlay with Indiana. I think this is one of my stronger spots of the day, and there's three reasons why, really. But you talked about one of them, and one of them is that the Knicks just seem to be a mess in general. But number two is how bad New York's defense has been going into the break. I mean, that was the thing they relied on, and they're going into the break, a 116.8 defensive rating over their last 8 games, 118.9 points allowed. And let's be fair, they had 132 points allowed in one of those games. I always like to go back and look specifically, but the reality is that all but one of them were 110 plus for a team that used to just lock people down on defense.
I want Chet Holmgren.
Yeah, so then my third reason relates to that, which is Miami's finally healthy, and I actually think Miami can be a good offensive team, not like the best offensive team, but good. But they've had so many guys in and out of the lineup that they just didn't get their continuity going. I actually feel like Miami, if they can stay healthy here, is going to get on a nice little run in general. So I'll say maybe not 20. I think this is like 12 to 15, though.
I really do wonder what the money is on a winning margin of 21 plus, though, because you mentioned that
question.
I think about it, I'm just like that roster when fully healthy. They have Kyle Lowry, and I mean I don't know if Markieff Morris is back, but I'm not necessarily counting him as one of the key cogs in there. No. Kyle Lowry, Duncan Robinson, Jimmy Butler, and Bam Adebayo all healthy. Is Hero healthy now as well?
I don't think he's on the injury report.
Tyler Hero now healthy as well. This team is like it's opposite spot. The Knicks are falling apart and the Heat are clicking, and I just don't see an angle for the Knicks to win this game, because if I'm trying to look at it from like, a perspective of game flow and how the Knicks could possibly come out of this with a win, I mean, I imagine RJ Barrett, even if he's playing, is still hobbled because Tom Thibodeau is a terrorist who left him in the game down 20 points with 1 minute left. And he's a game time decision. Yep. And he's questionable. So like once again, that's just another, there are so many things up in the air for this Knicks team. Our best player, and yes, he's better than Julius Randle, our best player might not even be playing, which means if you get the Heat at this number, even if you missed on 4.5 earlier, you'll still probably get a better number than you would get when the game tips off, because my guess is that RJ Barrett does not play.
And maybe Robinson too.
Robinson. And even if he does, he's not going to be himself.
Yeah.
Which means that we're going to rely on Nerlens Noel and Taj Gibson to run the paint. And Nerlens Noel's a good paint defender, but he can't do anything offensively. He's a liability. I just don't see an angle that the Knicks have to succeeding here, besides if Fournier and Randall both dropped 40 points. And maybe not 40, but that kind of game
big
where
games.
Fournier hits 11 threes inexplicably.
Right. Which he's done.
But then, that's not the only thing that needs to happen, is my point.
Right.
Even if that happens and Fournier has 40 points, if the rest of the team doesn't perform, we could still end up with under 100. Yeah. And that's not going to do it here if the Knicks defense is as bad as it's been playing against such a fully healthy Miami team.
Yep. So I'll leave you with this. After our conversation here, I'm interested in Miami's team total over also, because the Knicks defense has been so bad. I mean, I'll have to look, but with a 212 total, we're probably talking about 108, 109, something like that. And then the other thing, which you got me
109, 109, 103.
That would be I don't hate it. And then I'm only looking on FanDuel, but Miami -9.5 is plus 140, 14.5 is plus 285.
I really like that 9.5.
Yeah,
that would be a play for me if
and
I
then
ever bet against the Knicks.
19.5 is plus 560. So might be worth one of those ladder plays even.
I think honestly, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn here because I made the proper call last week, but all I'm saying is the odds for the Nets to win that game at halftime were probably in the 4 digits. So with the Knicks,
I think it was 1,300. I think
with the Knicks, you have to realize that the things that are usually not possible or quote unquote improbable, it's not like Vegas. I'm here to tell you, Vegas does not understand the New York Knicks. And you know why? Because no one does. They're an absolute clusterfuck. And there are some games that they're just not matched up well for, but you also like you can't make this spread Miami -9.5 because then
Right.
it's right after the All-Star break and the Knicks are at home and the game time decisions are still there. I'm telling you right now, this game's at least double digits. 9.5 plus 140. If I bet against the Knicks, would be a top play for me. But
All
I
right.
don't.
There you have it from the Knicks fan himself. All right, on to from your fandom to mine. Philadelphia versus Minnesota. Philly's -2.5, 229 total. Minnesota is on a back-to-back here after throttling the Memphis Grizzlies last night.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
They did. Listen, it was a great game,
It
but I will
was.
say it was also a very tough and long fought game. That
Yes.
was wire to wire difficult. And I think starters played a lot of minutes. If I pull up the game log on my phone right now. Yeah, D'Lo played 38 minutes. Cat only played 27, which is actually quite. Oh, that's because he had 5 fouls. But yeah, Anthony Edwards played over 30 minutes. Even Patrick Beverley played almost 30 minutes. So they are going to be tired, particularly the guards. I'd imagine Edwards and Beverley are not exactly well rested in this spot. And that does cause some problems when you look at the guy who is taking the floor for the first time as a Philadelphia 76er, most likely tonight, James Harden. This is one of my don't overthink it kind of games. Even though I'm running with the public and I even wrote next to this game, I'm ready to get hurt. Because I know that like Philly's, even though you're a Minnesota fan, we can agree Philly is mostly at least the better team, right?
No,
On
absolutely not.
paper, no, not
Yeah,
on
yeah.
paper. Yeah,
No, they
on,
are. I am pretty high on the Timberwolves
no,
roster,
I
I
am
will
too.
say.
And I think they're very
But
underrated.
yes, I
But
agree with you.
yeah,
Philly is the better team on paper.
Philly on paper at least is the better
Yes.
team. You have Minnesota on the back-to-back. You have Philly adding one of the top 10 players in the league in the last couple of years. Some would say top 5. I personally wouldn't, but I just like this to me is the epitome of what a trap line and me deciding screw it, I'm going to fall for the trap anyway is. Cuz like I can't bring myself to take the Timberwolves here, even though, like, because everything points to the Sixers, I want to take the Timberwolves. But at the same time, like, the rest problem is really sitting with me tough. If I look up, I'm going to look up because I had it up before, but I don't have it up anymore. The Minnesota stats on no days of rest.
3-6 against the spread, 6 and
Yeah.
3 to the over.
Exactly. Yeah, 6-3 against the spread is, or sorry, 3-6 against the
3 and
spread is
6.
things I wanted to mention. But I also wanted to see their scoring numbers, which if this page will load, I will happily have for you in a second.
I can try to.
Yahoo is just Yahooing out. Here we go. Yeah, they shoot 45% from the field, 33% from 3 on no days of rest, which is actually, comparatively speaking, not terrible. It's more like middle of the pack. I just don't think middle of the pack is enough to cut it here, offensively speaking, against one of the top 10 defenses in the NBA in the Philadelphia 76ers. I don't know if it's a hot take anymore, but James Harden is not as bad at defense as everyone thinks he is, or than he used to actually be. To be fair, he's gotten a lot better at it, particularly paint defense. And now he's on a team that has defensive specialists, meaning that he's rarely ever going to have to cover the best player, which gives him a lot more energy for his offensive game. I think that Embiid and Harden have been very excited to play with each other for quite some time now. I'm not saying it's all going to click right away, but with Minnesota being on the back-to-back and their guards especially being tired from both playing, from 3 of them playing 30 minutes plus, or at least 28 minutes plus, to be fair to specifics. I like Philly here, but I'm very tentative because it just looks like a classic Vegas trap.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add here. I agree that this looks like a game that should be Phillies, and it feels that way to me, especially because Minnesota just defensively is not very good, and Philadelphia is. And when you look at teams like Philadelphia has the ability to score, and I think Harden will actually help them with that. I'm not a James Harden fan, but I think if he's motivated, which he often isn't, but I think coming in, to a new team after the All-Star break, he's going to be here. I think that's going to help them offensively quite a bit. And against a team like Minnesota, that is a huge Achilles heel. So they're probably going to be able to score. Like you said, Minnesota on a back-to-back, the guards definitely could be tired. That was a hard-fought game last night. I will say Minnesota this year is number 5 in fast break points, and Philadelphia is number 28 defending them.
Okay.
And so I think the one thing that makes me feel like Minnesota can hang in here is if they can push the pace to the kind of game that they want to play. If Philadelphia slows it down and it's a slugfest, Minnesota is going to get beaten by more than 2.5.
Especially if it's a half court setting game, because last time that was the case, Embiid had 42 and 14 on Cat.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. So I think the way that Minnesota hangs in this game is to play pressure defense, to get turnovers, to push the pace, to get out on fast break, and then to shoot well, which always is the case. I think because it's a back-to-back, I mean, I might stay away from this game anyway. I actually think Minnesota, like I said, I'm pretty high on their roster, and I think that they can hang with anybody on a given night, but I don't think this is the best spot for them to do that. So, but I'm going to stay away. I'm not super confident in Philadelphia either.
Respectable. Definitely respectable.
So, yeah.
I mean, honestly, one thing I might look at is the under, just because you have guys coming off a back-to-back from the T-Wolves end, and on the 76ers end, you have an offense that hasn't necessarily played together yet. So 229 is a kind of high total, but then obviously you have the concerns with Minnesota being the 5th fastest team in the league, and if they control the pace of the game, that is completely, right. Out of the park. But if the 76ers control the pace of the game with their 27th pace team, I think the under might be worth a half unit play at under 229.
Yeah, and Harden does play slow. That's I mean,
especially with his ISO game,
but he plays slow. So
yeah.
Yep. All right, so this next one, man, I'm going to let you run with because I literally have almost nothing on this game. It was one that I just didn't get too much. Mavs at Jazz.
This
Utah
kicks off
5.5.
This kicks off my dog portion of the night.
All right, let's do it.
I'm not going money line here, but I do like Dallas plus 5.5. It's just a lean right now. I don't have an official play on it because there's a lot of injury, game time decision questionables for Trey Burke, Reggie Bullock, Marquise Chris. I think the depth for Dallas is going to be incredibly important tonight, which is why I'm waiting for those injuries. I understand that they're not usually the guys you'd wait for. Something that you can't really find in the stats that I've noticed from watching Luka Doncic is one of his favorite things to do is get a pick and roll with a big man and get the switch. And the way the Jazz lost in the playoffs last year against the Clippers, was Rudy Gobert, or was it against the Clippers? Who the Jazz lost to?
I don't know.
I forgot who it was, but whoever it was, they pulled Rudy Gobert out of the paint, and he became useless. So my concern with the Jazz here is that if Rudy Gobert keeps getting switched on to Luka, who's had 3 40-plus point games in his last 4, Luka might go crazy. And when Luka goes crazy, I think Dallas is is always in a great spot to cover, especially when you have 5.5 points here. Utah's defense hasn't been incredible in the last couple of weeks. I understand getting Gobert back changes that. But if this game goes how I see it going with Luka pulling Gobert out of the paint a lot, that's not going to change a lot about how their defense has been performing. And Dallas is also, I feel like, lacking a little bit of respect here in this line. They're top 11 in both offensive and defensive ratings since January 15th. I'm aware the public, from what I've seen, does agree with me, which doesn't bode particularly well when you look at taking underdogs. Usually that's not something you want to see. But they also have, even though they have 67% of the bets, they have 90% of the handle. So a lot of the big money's coming in on the Mavericks plus 5.5. I also think that even if Burke, Bullock, and Chris all get ruled in, this line only moves maybe a half point because they're not big impact guys. So I can still get them at plus 5. I can wait on it, which I'm going to. If I shouldn't say all three. If Bullock and Chris play, I don't need Trey Burke to play because he's running the point, and I can have Jalen Brunson run backup point to Luka if necessary. If Bullock can slide into the 2, but if Bullock and Chris play, and they have help on the tall guys as well with Marquise Chris, I like Dallas at +5.5 or +5 or whatever they end up being. Not really if it dips under 4. But I like Luka getting this many points in a matchup that I think is actually favorable to him because of how easy it is to manipulate Rudy Gobert out of the paint. I guarantee you, whoever's playing center for the Mavericks is going to set high pick and rolls about 5 feet in front of the 3-point line in order to get that switch open. Because I remember when Luka plays, every time Luka plays the Clippers, the reason that he's so good against them is that the Clippers always have, for some reason, Reggie Jackson's on Luka Doncic, and then the high pick and roll comes, and it's Ivica Zubac. And Ivica Zubac, I'm sure if someone asked him about this, has been more haunted by Luka Doncic than any player in the league in the last year. Because I guarantee you, if you watch film of those games, it's just him getting pulled out of the paint on these high pick and rolls. And having to play isolated defense against Luka Doncic. If Rudy Gobert has to do the same thing here, not only do I think he does it poorly, but I think he also gets in foul trouble and throws off the chemistry of this Jazz team. This is a very specific line of thinking, obviously, but it's drawn on the way Luka plays, which I do think is consistent because he is consistent with the way he tries to play. His play style is very consistent in what he tries to do every game. I think it's no different here, and I think Dallas is lacking a little bit of respect on this number.
I love it, man. That's a great breakdown. You were right. It was the Clippers who beat Utah in the playoffs 4-2. So that was a good call. Yeah. And honestly, and
Reggie Jackson went crazy in that series as the point guard because they kept having those high pick and rolls and pulling Gobert out.
Nice. Yes. I mean, that's what I'm saying is that's a great observation. I hadn't seen that before, but that makes a ton of sense. If you get Gobert out of the lane, it reduces his defensive ability tremendously.
And he's not fast enough to stay with guards.
Yes. Yeah. And I will also say without having done the full breakdown, I agree with you about Bullock playing. I think Dallas can be offensively challenged at times if Luka doesn't just go off. And so having a good shooter on the perimeter, I think just gives them some help on the offensive end. So I like that call on watching to see if Bullock plays too.
So. And Marquise Chris, for what it's worth, can shoot as well. He doesn't play that often, but he's a big man who can shoot, which is huge. Gobert out of the paint. So I wonder if him playing or not playing is actually more of an impact than people think, because if him being on the floor means they can spread the floor more and pull Rudy Gobert out of the paint even more.
It's good. I love it. Great breakdown. All right, this next one, unless you did some work in between when we mess it. All right, so this one will be more on me. Pelicans at the Suns, Phoenix -6.5, 229.5 total. This is one where I actually I do have a bet in already even. So Phoenix is on a back-to-back. Not really anything to write home about there. 4-5 against the spread, 5-4 to the over on a back-to-back this year. Obviously, this isn't news because it was true yesterday, too, that Chris Paul is out. I'm going to reiterate what I said yesterday because it kind of played out, honestly. Well, it didn't play out on the defensive side, but Phoenix last year without Chris Paul actually scored more points, 6 more points a game with him out than with him in. They also gave up over 7 more points a game, though. And so they played Oklahoma City yesterday, who we've talked about how they can't score even against bad defenses. And so I actually think that it played out about how you would expect, which is Phoenix scored a lot, and I think they're going to give up more points when they play decent offenses. New Orleans, obviously, the trade to get McCollum. So they've played 5 games with him. I threw out the first one just because I think there's a time of like getting settled in, and it wasn't a good game. But in the other 4, New Orleans scored 114, 120, 109, and 118. Maybe they can't keep that up, but that's phenomenal scoring for the Pelicans, better than what they had been doing. However, they did also give up 124, 121, 125, and then 90. So they had one game where they played a little bit better defensively, the one game they won. So they scored better, but they gave up a lot of points as well. They did go 1-3 in those 4 games, but they played the Spurs, but they also played the Raptors, the Grizzlies, and the Mavericks. So it's not like they had an easy schedule in those games. Phoenix is number 5 in points in the paint, but the Pelicans are number 8 defending it. New Orleans, number 8 in fast break points, which surprised me, actually, but Phoenix is number 4 defending that. However, Phoenix, I think, plays faster when Chris Paul isn't playing, and so I'm not sure if that will hold up in the same way that it has the rest of the season. This is a really good matchup for Phoenix point guard, which is probably Booker in practice here. Payne's going to be out again. So it could be another good game for Booker. But this is one. So this is one where when I first saw the line open at 7.5, I went ahead and I took the Pelicans because I actually think the Pelicans are a pretty decent team. I think with McCollum, they're a little bit better team. Not top of the league, but I think Phoenix is going to be a little bit more up and down without Chris Paul too. I think he's a stabilizing force. They can't seem to get DeAndre Ayton involved. Again, last night I thought would be a place where he would have had a great game, and he just didn't. He bombed again. They're not getting him the ball. He's not doing stuff with it that much when he's getting it right now. So I think that this could be a close back and forth game. I actually am interested in the over here too, though I didn't take it. But I think New Orleans is going to be a higher scoring team now than they were before the break. I think Phoenix is going to be a higher scoring team now than when Chris Paul was in. And so I like this to be a relatively close game. And so if you're going to give me 7.5 points, I'll take it. Yeah.
Two things. First of all, unrelated, but very, very good news. They've located and safely found and recovered Mitchell Robinson's father.
That is great news.
So that is phenomenal.
Yep. Awesome.
Thank God for that. But yeah, going back to this game, as you said, I don't have much on this. Just a couple things to add. I kind of am interested in the Pelicans money line here. I don't think that the Suns are used to. I mean, they're obviously not used to playing back-to-backs without Chris Paul. Not having your key point guard is obviously a big staple. And when I'm talking about teams that may have made big changes over the deadline that might not come to fruition until they had a week or so to practice with each other, and none of them were really playing in the All-Star game besides Ingram, this is like the Pelicans fall under that category. The trade for CJ McCollum was a great move. We saw that he played well, but didn't gel perfectly in the first couple of games. I think that now after the break, he's had a lot of time to work with the team. We saw that he had that problem with texting Zion. They're texting now. Good for them. But I do like the 6.5 here. I think the Pelicans can keep this close. And I do think Devin Booker has a good game, but I don't think that necessarily is going to be enough. As you said, the Pelicans score a lot, but give up a lot. So if you want to beat the Pelicans, you have to score a lot. I think the Suns may see some trouble in that game, especially, as you said, with points in the paint. Jonas Valanciunas is a good paint defender. And the Pelicans, with Herb Jones in there as well, have had a lot of length and are very good at stopping teams from getting buckets in the paint, which might force a lot of outside shots in the Suns. Whereas if they had Chris Paul, he might be able to calm things down a little bit and reset the offense. So I do like the Pelicans here, going on my dog theme for the night games.
Like it.
But I don't have as much on. I don't have a play on it yet. I think, though, after talking about it, I do like taking the 6.5 here.
Yeah. And the one other thing I'll say, which you can't really say when this is going to happen, but I feel like without Chris Paul, it's also more likely for a game to just get away from Phoenix, like they're going to be good. I don't think they're still going to be good, but I think they could have a game here and there where the game just gets away from them. So I don't hate that like half unit on the money line. It's still at plus 225. So, something definitely to consider. So, all right. Last game of the night, the Battle of LA, Clippers at Lakers. The Lakers are up to -2 now, 221.5 total.
Yeah. I have a Clipper fan roommate. I know we've talked about it before. One of the few Clipper fans in the world. It's like their Super Bowl. They're very excited for this game. And that's something that I also think plays in their favor because Clippers are way more voted like the Lakers. And this is not like a shot at the Clippers, but it's more like it means more for the Clippers if they beat the Lakers than it means for the Lakers to beat the Clippers because the Clippers are missing Kawhi, Paul George, Norman Powell. Their expectations are, the floor. And they're right now performing better than the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers have a lot of pressure on them and have one of the toughest schedules in the league in the second half of the season. There's no Anthony Davis today. The Lakers' defense has been terrible as of late. The Clippers need to be able to rebound to make this game competitive because the Lakers are good in the paint. They're also 10th in points in the paint per game. The Clippers are 27th in opponents' points in the paint per game. So that does concern me. But the Clippers have dominated this series as of late. They've won 30 of the last 37 meetings over the last 10 seasons. That's the most wins by any team against a single opponent since the beginning of the 2012-2013 season. The Lakers, this is a stat that I also thought was incredibly interesting. The Lakers have allowed opponents to make at least 10 3-pointers in 54 of their 58 games this season, tied for the most such games in the NBA. each of their last 10 opponents has hit double-digit threes. Looking at that from the other side, the last 4 times these two teams have played, the Clippers have shot over 40% from three, and they've shot over 50% from the field the last 3 times. So this is another thing where I look at a coach like Ty Lue, who is regarded as one of the better coaches in the league, and I see that he seems to have a winning strategy against the Los Angeles Lakers. The Clippers are also top 15 in offensive and defensive ratings since January 15th. The Lakers are not top 15 in either, and both teams are top 11 in pace. Combined with the pace and the fact that the Clippers shoot the ball so well against the Lakers, and the Lakers need this game desperately for their morale, I do like the over 222. My main play is going to be the Clippers money line at plus 115, but I also do like the over at 222.
Yep, I like where your head's at, man. You mentioned the one thing, or the two things that give me pause, which is those matchups where the Lakers are number 10 in points in the paint, Clippers number 27 defending. You mentioned this stuff. That's the one thing that I'm like, okay, I don't love that. But
they have been out-rebounded and outscored in the paint in their recent games against the Lakers, and they've still managed to win a lot.
Right. Well, and that's where I agree. Like, I'm definitely on the Clippers side here as well. Part of it just comes down to the Lakers are chronically underperforming this year, or maybe they're not even, honestly.
Maybe they're being chronically overvalued.
Yeah, they've got an aging LeBron, which I still think LeBron's
why are they
good.
favorites here?
LeBron's good. Okay, so they still have that, but Westbrook's not. Malik Monk can shoot, but then what else do they have? And so I think, like you're saying, I think the Lakers get overvalued. The Lakers get overvalued because they're the Lakers. And a lot of times they get points because they're the Lakers. The Clippers, on the other hand, like they've played better at home in their last 10. They've scored 121.3 points, and they're kind of at home, right?
Technically at home.
Technically they're at home, exactly. So
it's not even like they have Clippers banners covering Lakers banners when they're playing it. Like, they still have to look. The Lakers banners are still in the arena. So it's not even like they play in the Lakers stadium for home games.
Totally. So that's what I'm saying is I think you can actually look at those home numbers a little bit because of where they're playing. The other thing I'll say is Anthony Davis being out again. Now, granted, some of the numbers this year when he and LeBron are both out, so we'd have to parse that out. But if you look at just him, their offensive rating is actually a little bit better with him out, but defensively they're significantly worse.
One of the worst defenses in the league without Anthony Davis.
Yeah, defensive rating of 114 when Davis is out, and they're giving up 113.43 points a game. So I'm with you. Actually, as we were talking about this, I definitely like the Clippers already. I'm kind of interested in their team total because with them being, they're actually up to -3 in some places, or +3 in some places now. So their team total is going to be lower than the Lakers. 110 is what their team total is set at.
Really?
And the Lakers are at 112. So
I'm going to take 110.
Yeah, that's over a place that I would look as well. And I'm with you. I like the money line. There's part of me that is greedy and wants to wait and let the Lakers get any kind of lead and get maybe, 130, 140 on the Clippers money line.
That would be nice.
I might think about doing that, but also
especially
who knows
with the Clippers being so good at making comebacks this year.
Yeah, that's right. They have been. So another thing to consider.
One thing I definitely look at, the last time these two teams played, Luke Kennard went crazy from 3. I'd be very interested. I'm going to look at 3-point made props for players, because now knowing that the Lakers are so bad at giving up points on threes, I'm very interested to see how the 3-point specialists are marketed right now.
Another thing to check out.
3-point field goals made. All right. I'm on the wrong game. That's why it didn't make sense.
It's going to be hard to find the right players on the wrong game.
Yes.
Although
Toronto, Charlotte is a tough one to find.
The sportsbook should be able to read your mind by now, shouldn't they?
Yeah. So Luke Kennard, three or more made threes is at plus 131. That's what I really like. I think that he's someone that they're obviously trying to get more and more shots to, especially now that their best options keep getting taken out of the game with Norman Powell not being there. I mean, he took 13 threes the last time they played the Lakers. He hit 11 of them. Do I think he's going to hit 11 again? Probably not. But do I think he's going to hit more than 3? Absolutely. So I like 3+ threes for him at plus 131. I might even, And you know what's crazy is 4 threes is plus 146. That's barely any value
Wow.
over
That's
3.
that's
So,
really strange. Usually
so
there's a big jump once you get into the plus
I
money.
mean, I'm gonna stay with 3 because taking 4 makes no sense if I barely get any help there.
Yeah,
But plus
totally.
131 on Luke Kennard, 3-pointers made. So that's 2 player props I've given out today
You're
as
just
well.
going crazy, man.
I'm
You're going
I'm
crazy.
happy the NBA is back. What can I say?
It's awesome.
Sad I have to watch my team get destroyed 2 days
Wha
2 days this
Hey,
weekend,
we'll
but
see. You never
good
know.
comes with the
So,
bad.
yep,
Sometimes opportunity cost of having basketball, sometimes I have to watch the Knicks play.
yep. All right, well, that's a big slate for today. I think a lot of good spots in there. Hopefully, it plays out the way that we're seeing it, but a lot of alignment on a lot of these games, and I think some good spots we found. So I know we've done this a few times, but give people the quick rundown on anything you're doing and remind them where to find you.
All right, yeah, you can find us anywhere you can find podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music. That is the Source Podcast with Job Goddard and Sam Hiller. You can find it linked on our Twitter page or on our website. Twitter page being at Source Podcast 11, website being www.sourcepodcast.com. And yeah, we have a live stream for betting on our media group, Blue Collar Media Group, BCMG. We do a show with them every Friday night at 8. So we're going to be back on the air at 8 o'clock tonight to discuss some of the games going on this weekend on multiple different sports. So tune into that as well. That's all the self plugs I got. Thank you for having me on again, man.
Yeah.
It's great to be here with you and break down the slate. I always feel like by the end of this, I have a much clearer sense of what I want to take and why.
Yep. I'm 100% on the same page. I enjoy that too. Like when I do it myself, I like some things, but doing it together, I find those spots better too. So thanks for coming on.
Anytime.
Hey, I say it at the end of every one of these shows, but if retweets, review the podcast, give it a 5-star, write a review.
Give it 6.
Give it 6 stars. Absolutely. I'd appreciate that. And if you have any thoughts, you know where to find me on Twitter at NBA Attack. Always happy to hear your thoughts and comments as well. So hey, let's go have a great night and come back tomorrow with some plus money in our pockets.
Amen.
All right. Everybody have
do
a good day. We'll see you on Twitter. Thanks, man.